Support for TUC in the Closet and the nonprofit Trans Unity Coalition is made by listeners like you. Thank you for your commitment to our mission. Empower the transgender community across America. Awesome. Hello, everyone. This is going to be... Actually, so no, wait, sorry. Cut. Hello, everybody. My name is Bree Taylor. She, her pronouns. I'm so excited. I'm actually really just going to jump right in. Welcome to a brand new podcast, TUC in the Closet. This is, to my knowledge, America's only trans-led podcast by a national trans nonprofit that is actually filmed on location inside of a closet. Oof. Okay, so I'm not really that bothered by this at all. And I promise, I pinky promise, right, that I am not that bothered by this. I am a little bothered by this, but it's fine. So some of these recordings might be, or appear to be, a little out of order. I did not have my main microphone recording for the key segment of this episode. I did, however, have the lavalier mic as a backup going. So everything was recorded, but as a professional courtesy, I did want to point out that the audio quality might sound a little bit different, but in both cases, I do feel that the two main recording devices are both perfectly sufficient and should sound fine. So that's why I'm not super bothered, but I am bothered for myself because it should have been part of the workflow that I should have had down. So that'll be just a learning opportunity to know. Make a checklist, make sure you're checking that list, and if that list isn't checked, well, what's the point of a checklist? I'm going to cut right back directly into the next portion of wherever this got injected into. Thank you for your patience. Looking at everything as I'm currently seeing it, I have the podcast microphone recording that's right here. And as you can see, the setup is very simple. Microphone, pop mic filter, everything else here. I usually record sound with a lavalier microphone. That is a little tiny microphone here that is what they call a wire, essentially. And this microphone has been super useful for recording a number of things. If I'm out and about speaking at a public event, it's really great for capturing my own voice on the move. But here I also have a dedicated podcast microphone. I don't use it too often. There is actually a particular use case for using it that I have found, and it's when you can have a stable environment, such as this, as silly as it sounds. But this is probably one of the most controlled audio recording environments that I could think of. And that's for a number of reasons. One, there's a lot of walling, and so my voice is going to bounce off of that very directly, just off the wall. Two, this is actually a closet, so there's a lot of nice clothes that are just kind of hanging around, and that actually creates audio padding. I'm not getting the same bouncing. I'm getting voice that bounces off of one wall or certain sides of this particular closet room, and then the vibrations going across the room get muffled by all of this fabric just lying around me. Here there's some items, soft items, some hard items. It will create a unique voice signature that I feel, while isn't something you would see in a recording studio, which tends to be perfectly controlled just to get all the acoustics right, this is something that I feel will leave a nice, distinct, crisp sound quality ultimately. And I'm really excited to see how this actually works. For the time being, I'm still actually wearing my headphones. I'm just getting a little sample of what this is all going to sound like ultimately. So right now, I'll explaining a little bit of the equipment setup that I have for the sound. I'm also just testing it in real time, which is really great because this particular microphone is direct throughput to here. Right now, there's a few things going on, and this might be recorded a little bit out of order. But for the most part, recorded pretty linearly. This will come off and I will get everything started in a second. And yeah, I'm really excited to begin the show. So, TUC in the Closet. what kind of materials and subject matters will we be talking about? So I would like to talk about pretty much anything. I oversee a national transgender advocacy nonprofit, and in this particular role, I hear so much about what's going on, not just near me, not just at large, but even at the local level in states many, many across. Being part of the fight for trans rights post 2024 has been incredibly rewarding, incredibly difficult, and also incredibly much a statement. I would say I feel truly honored to be in this position. And I would never go back and say I don't want that. This has been an incredible opportunity to connect with so many people and to bring what I can to that greater ecosystem of everyone advocating for the rights of human beings. Isn't that something that is just an honor to say that you are part of? To fight for the rights of other human beings. I'm both shocked that people still have to fight for that, not shocked in a manner that I don't understand the principles behind that, but shocked that I grew up misled thinking that our country was one that concerned equally for everyone else and that cares for others. Because I grew up and that's what I saw near me. That's what I saw. And I thought, well, surely it must be like this everywhere else. But no, there is so much going on in terms of not just widespread misinformation or severe lacks of understanding, but critical, coordinated efforts to keep it that way. And it's like, what the hell? That is the deception of the American dream. But that being said, when you love something so much, you don't give up on it. And that's why I have been inspired by those who I've come across in at least the past couple of years, definitely more, but at least directly the past couple of years in this one role, in seeing people who have said, it's looking bad, everyone, but I'm not here to give up. I'm here to ask, how do we keep fighting, not just for us, but for that next generation? And I feel like there's very much a statement to be made that the believers in this country, the believers in America, that is where the inability to give up, the tenacity to persevere, and the perpetual hope is derived from. And it is beautiful. It is something that is so empowering. And that is the kind of thing I'm convinced that I've seen it. I'm convinced I've seen hardworking people who do not give up. And I want others out there who feel like they have doubt, that they don't see that for themselves. I want them to know I have seen it, and whatever I can do to convince you or to show you that this is what I'm seeing, here's where I'm seeing that hope, that reignited flame. That is something that passing that torch, I feel, is imparting knowledge, imparting an understanding, imparting what I do know. And we need to be sure that we are not just cultivating hope like that, but also paying it forward, because we're all in this together. Whether or not we want to be, whether or not we want to say, hey, there's a person down the street and somehow we're locked into a system together, it would be so much more comfortable just being like, okay, you're just that person down there. I don't have to know you. You don't have to know me. I can just keep to my own. But no, we are in this same problem together. All 350 million-ish of us, at least in this one country alone. And it's a big challenge. But that being said, there's a lot of us out here who are still in that fight, and those who also want to get involved, those who want to know what they can do in their own respective communities and do their part. That's where people like myself and the rest of the team come in and say, here's what you can do. Here's how you can help. Here's what you need to know. And it's just been such an incredible honor to be part of that. And so to that end, and to really wrap up my eagerness to express how I feel here. Let's put it in a podcast. Let's put it in a podcast. Let's put it in a podcast in a literal closet. And it is so cool that in Pride Month of 2026, that we're getting our In the Closet podcast finally up and running. But why exactly right now? Why is this particular week, this particular month, this particular moment the one where we're saying, yes, we're going to release it? Well, there's been some drama afoot. And this drama is one that it is important that we get the word out there. This isn't something that's about ego. This isn't something about, I felt wrong, so I'm going to take people to... There are thousands of people right now who have lost their voices in certain digital spaces, particularly those in trans umbrella spaces. And right now, there are a few things that could go critically wrong there, and I'm hoping to do my best to get the word out there, to create public pressure, and to mitigate that damage, because these are real people. This isn't a joke. This isn't made up. And this is something that was put in an article saying this is 100% true. And this needs to get out there, and this needs to get out there soon. And to that end, I will need to explain it in our next featured segment, which is going to be, Reddit. All right, so today, the first thing that we're going to talk about is going to be Reddit. Now, Reddit is a social media platform that I know not everybody particularly uses, and I know that in my role within Trans Unity Coalition, do you also oversee the Trans Unity Coalition's Reddit account. And that is something that will be relevant later on. But recently, Reddit permanently and wrongfully, permanently, I should emphasize again, banned the Trans Unity Coalition Reddit account. And this is something that I am currently fighting tooth and nail to get the story out there about this having been not rooted in any correct basis, this being something that was improper. I have since called it site abuse because I thought if I was in the same position, if I was overseeing a website as a site administrator, if I were to just have one of those users disappear for a reason that was not their fault, for a reason that puts others in harm, and for a reason that no way to appeal it, no way to say, hey, take a look at this, no human being that can actually go, here's what we're thinking, and this is wrong. This is during Pride Month, and this is a big corporation that, whether it be this is a case of some account falling through the cracks, or who's even to say intentionally directed malice, pure transphobia, pure prejudice. Who's to say, really? Because this isn't something that I can actually prove. I can't say that, yes, somebody targeted me, somebody targeted our nonprofit, somebody targeted our community, versus just, oh, it was just AI or a system error. And either way, though, in thinking, if I were the site administrator, would I be abusing that user regardless? And the answer is yes. If I made a person feel that they were mistreated as a longtime user of their platform and it wasn't in any correct basis, then yes, that would be abusive. That would be what people call site abuse. So no, this isn't exaggeration. This is a clear example of site abuse by Reddit as a company towards our nonprofit. And when this had happened, very quickly, I wrote a news article about this and put it on the site. I put as kind of a little quirky line at the very start that the way my writing style typically works is I write in a manner as if I'm directly talking to you, as if I'm directly talking to the audience. I do not really enjoy reading articles that are cold, stiff, too formal, too much of a journalistic duty to not let that article writer's character, their charm, their nuance of how they stylize things, even having grammar that is inconsistent, because that is their consistent method of writing something. That is something that I find lacking in a lot of news sources, because it just sounds like, here's what happened, here's what our investigation found, here's all the facts, here's everything going on with this story that you now know. And it's like, it's kind of boring. And I feel that, well, we have a good opportunity to teach those volunteers in our space how to become better writers, but how to make their portfolio really stand out, how to make that human being's thought process, their tone, and the way that they want to put pen to paper really shine. And so I mentioned that the way that I write is like I'm talking to you. And we had somebody kind of as a joke say, hey, want to challenge that. If this is true, if you really write as if you talk to people, why not just take the story and read it out loud? And that was the tipping point where in asking, should we have a podcast? And this has been something that had been kind of in the works, just like really finding the right time, getting the setup and everything going. That was a little bit more, like we need to prioritize that first before we do it. And currently it's not a priority. Well, thanks Reddit. Now it is a priority. So now we have a podcast. Thank you so much. Still going to try to expose you. So the article, which is on the transunitycoalition.org website, can still be read today. It can still be shared. And if anyone does also feel outrage in the story as it's explained, please share the article. We need people out there to see this. I and my team have no way right now to even share this on Reddit. Again, they have banned accounts, and in reproducing the story, they have been implying a consistent message. If you share this story, we will ban you too. Really, really fucked up. And yes, we do swear on this podcast. Probably a lot. Maybe not today a lot, but someday maybe a lot. Anytime that I make allusion to a particular slur, in this case the F-slur, I will probably just call it F-slur. And even the article itself, these are asterisked out, so it isn't just full wording. But that will be in part the content warning for today's main portion, which I'm essentially just going to read. This is 9 pages of the article. Again, it's a little longer. And the content warning, as it is expressed at the start, content warning, references to slurs, verbal abuse, moderator abuse, and one Reddit link, plus partial photo showing direct homophobia. What you are about to read, or I should say, sorry, what you're about to hear, is 100% true. This is a story written from the perspective of one person, my perspective. I am not more special than others, and the purpose of this article isn't meant to suggest special treatment of any kind is warranted, but rather gives a clear demonstration of how site abuse can silently occur and how the burden can unfairly be put on vulnerable users themselves. Before publishing, I asked other members of the trans community if they felt any objection to releasing the story. If there was, I would have dropped it immediately. The underlying experience of site abuse, user frustration, and overall drain on marginalized communities is not unique to myself. Those of us here who have experienced the same abuses on social media platforms such as Reddit and others are encouraged to reach out to discuss further action, or perhaps even just someone to listen who will believe you. Now is when I take my mandatory water break, because speaking for a long time causes one to get a little parched. This article will cover a few topics: investigating moderator abuse in queer spaces, perceived site abuse from Reddit, the importance of social media as a tool for connection and slur reclamation. It also lightly covers AI and shitification, a real term, one also known as platform decay. My writing style, and in this case, my speaking style, is relatively freeform, and I often write as though I were speaking aloud to you in the same room. If anything is confusing, incoherent, or really anything that prevents you from understanding the underlying facts or message, please let me know. Let me know your constructive criticism to improve what I aim to do. Point a story, to paint out a story, apologies, to paint a story, to inform, and to inspire critical thinking. With that all out of the way, let's jump right in. This all sort of begins back in November 2024. A nationwide election sent a rallying message to bullies everywhere. Trolls and abusers can hold major victories in the United States and conveniently get away with it so long as they frame their abuse through one specific form of hate: transphobia. Within months, we saw tech giants like Meta and Google update user end policy to 1, change how hate is defined on their platforms, providing more safeguards to religious groups and less trans and queer users, and 2, permit more instances of what I call hate but just barely. i.e. obviously still hate, but the kind of reviewer can say, I don't see it, to justify non-removal, while creating a hostile environment to those filing reports in good faith that effectively says, we do not care. At the same time, I was already beginning a deep undercover investigation for exposing transphobic moderator abuse in LGBTQ+ subreddits, e.g. mod abuse, specifically permitting the following: cases of transphobia, double standards in allowing shared resources for cis folk but not for trans folk, and other trans targeting cases occurring within these spaces where we have since seen high-profile stories such as those in R Rainbow, also the subreddit for Rainbow, or R Trans, subreddit for trans. But these aren't the only reports made by trans individuals of mod abuse by those that they thought they could trust, and most occur without ever being brought to light. Nearly all queer spaces make some mention of being safe and inclusive to all who are queer, but few have made the cut in effectively demonstrating that they adamantly support and represent all letters under the queer umbrella, with the evidence to back it up. Most of these spaces instead shift the user-facing burden to self-regulation. If enough people call something out, it may elevate to the status of being taken seriously. But if not, you're unfortunately and totally left on your own if a moderator shuts down the conversation by ignoring your report or claiming you are simply being argumentative without actually listening to your story. This empty messaging attempts to appease frustrated users who are beginning to call out behind-the-scenes transphobia with the same mod teams that are expected to be there 100% for the community, often buying time, damage mitigation, and zero oversight for continual improvement on the team itself. Because becoming a Reddit moderator typically requires no background check or review process, and is as simple as another moderator with permissions deputizing a new person, there is zero guarantee that moderators, including those in queer subreddits, are trans inclusive. Nor is there even a guarantee that they aren't just straight up a full-on transphobe, merely acting out being decent enough to enter a position of power. In some cases, completely unrelated Redditors can invade and overtake a whole subreddit simply by claiming it through our Reddit request, Reddit's formal subreddit claim protocol, sometimes in seconds. Remember that. Please remember that. Reddit request. It will come up later. With no real accountability for vetting these often anonymous mods, how do you know who is really on your side in all of this? We often hear, trust us. But can we? When sometimes what users need to hear is, we support our trans community and this is how. Many of these larger, sometimes 100K plus user spaces have failed to actually explain or demonstrate the how. And regardless whether this effect is born from indifference, misunderstanding, or outright malice, one thing is clear: it harms all of us and must continue to be called out. While this investigation into mod abuse is, or was, still technically ongoing, Reddit Incorporated has wrongfully acted in a way that effectively halts and compromises that investigation. The company permanently banned my personal account while discussing and educating users on Idaho's trans bathroom ban, and then doubled down by permanently banning a national trans nonprofit's Reddit account, for which I have authorization over, in what the company alleges is ban evasion despite being legitimate business use. These are longtime accounts that have always had full post history set to public in order to convey trust and transparency, but are now completely removed from public eye. And as an advocate who still enjoys learning via conversation from our wonderful transgender community that somehow found its place on Reddit, I am just as nameless or anonymous as any bad faith troll with a fresh new alt account. Perhaps there is a positive upside to being set free, but in regard to building a repertoire of moderators to uncover mod abuse, things would now work very differently, require expending much more time, and in many ways be starting from the ground up, if I continued to pursue this investigation. Damages such as those are not arbitrary, but real, measurable, and most importantly, unjustified. In theory, I'm not allowed to use the site anymore. which is a complicated statement because in some places Reddit A claims multiple accounts are permitted. B implies that quote unquote continuing to break rules as opposed to permitted normal use is effectively what qualifies as ban evasion. And C, despite that, Reddit did still within just a couple of days, immediately, and permanently banned a secondary non-personal account after the first one. It is worth mentioning also that while my primary account is banned, my personal one, the Reddit platform still allows me to remain logged in, view content, view ads, share all my tracking data. I can even save posts and go right back to them. In many ways, almost like normal Reddit use. My account profile and its history, while no longer visible from an outside device or anyone else looking externally, can still be viewed by myself while I log in. In essence, it feels closer to total censorship based on my identity rather than an actual site ban where my computer is actually blocked. Whether this escalates to a full IP ban in the coming days is anyone's guess. How have I been using social media? Or, well, who cares? It is quite easy to say, don't just use Reddit. Again, in theory, yes, and as studies have shown, unhealthy social media use of any platform is indeed associated to long-term problems. And here's not just one study, but here's a whole 2022 meta-analysis of 123 independent published studies, which I probably will link here somewhere or provide that too, showing correlation between social media use and poor self-esteem, poor satisfaction, depression, and counterintuitively, loneliness. And even without reviewing formal research, as users, we already know this to be true. Whether encountering toxic trolls, pot stirrers, online creeps, or other antisocial personalities that even in the real world are deemed so extreme that they too would be put in their place or asked to leave for making everyone else feel uncomfortable. But for vulnerable people, particularly trans people who may feel so removed from a sense of community because their own place of residency is already hostile, transphobic, and discriminatory, online spaces like these provide much needed connection to help people feel respected, to learn from others, or simply even to be seen by peers many hundreds of miles away. Beyond that, users employ social media for countless other practical purposes, as do I. This is the part where I say, hey, thanks again for listening. If you want to ignore a few different points that are meant to convey, let's say, journalistic relatability to the listener, that's you, about how I use social media, paint emotional depth, and really hook your heart. Feel free to skip these next few points if you think it's too self-aggrandizing. I don't need to waste your time, but that said, I'm about to share how I've done my best to use community-specific subreddits to connect with others in truly socially positive ways. And here are just a few of my favorite ones. First one, just last month, I used Reddit to coordinate an open invitation barbecue in the park event for local city residents to receive free food and have some fun in the sun with neighbors they had never met before. In coordinating this event and promoting it over several videos of Reddit updates, I caught the eye of local residents eager to help sponsor it, and that ultimately permitted some spending cash donated by the community for supplying 110 free meals in Michigan. 4 members near my area, complete with outdoor activities, a live DJ, a welcoming safe space for all, and everyone had fun. 2. In 2023, Reddit was the primary tool I made use of to lead a week-long community-led hunt that ultimately put a dog thief in jail, returned the dog to her elderly owner, and landed me on San Francisco primetime news. The final Reddit update post, which I believe can actually still be found on the San Francisco subreddit, appears to show a person who strikes an uncanny resemblance and name to the same person who broke into Mila Kunis's home back in 2015. Wild. But the funniest remark has got to be the 2 Reddit comments, which respectively state, quote, I feel like a few Redditors stormed the Golden Gate Bridge and they found her. Picturing a bunch of Redditors executing a raid made me laugh out loud, end quote. Followed by the second comment in a humble repliers, we did it, in tiny text. And third story, all the way back in 2018, I created a dedicated digital space, the subreddit Trans Memorial, the same community which served as the catalyst for founding the entire nonprofit of Trans Unity Coalition. It was a subreddit to forever memorialize members of the trans community that we have lost through written obituary and storytelling, as an outlet for both expressing personal grief and for uplifting others through memory of good people we have lost. These are all very real and I would say socially good applications of social media and how I envision it ought to be used. Less so for attacking people and injecting more distressing noise to mass audiences. And this is all simply from my own personal Reddit account. In the capacity of a nonprofit leader and with my executive director hat on, our Trans Unity Coalition Reddit account, i.e. not my personal account, has been used to provide legislative breakdowns, relate to community frustrations at the state and national U.S. level through engagement, comments, and share with others our free resources to those around the country. Our team makes use of many platforms and approaches to do this, but Reddit having access to large trans spaces has been one primary medium for this purpose of slowly introducing more and more people to our trans-focused services. By this point, I feel there is enough compelling reason to show how simply, quote-unquote, not using Reddit, following a permaban, isn't tantamount to just not scrolling for news. This is quite different from that. And as a human being, all of our collective uses of social media, that includes all of us, are for a multitude of important reasons. Whether that be escapism, daily community updates, story sharing, or you name it. Why do you continue to use it? It must be because there is inherent value specific to you that only you can define, and that makes it just as important. But a forever ban offers less, not more, of that. So let's get to the heart of the matter. Was this even deserved? I want you to be the judge of that, not me. My permaban experience. On June 10th, I participated in a comment chain regarding Idaho bathroom bans and use of collected DNA. Yes, for using a public bathroom, which is insane, as criminal evidence. This was on my personal account in our transgender. As I track trans and queer legislation in all states, I sometimes have extra insight to fill in certain gaps of understanding surrounding intentionally confusing bills. In this case, I stumbled upon a user who hypothesized how the term, quote-unquote, biological sex, as a term, may be legally defined within Idaho under HB 752 of 2026. I wanted to point out that a pre-existing bill, HB 421, one which unscientifically defines biological sex and already became law in 2024, may be how Idaho courts interpret the new application of the term in the 2026 bill. I provided a short breakdown of these bills and their relation to each other, which was met with positive votes. For those of you who are not familiar with Reddit's voting system, this typically indicates support or appreciation of the idea or time taken contributing a new post or comment. This breakdown also included a direct quote from HB 421, which states the following. Term 7, or Clause 7. Confusion and ambiguities surrounding the definitions of sex, male, female, and related terms can hinder individual efforts to enjoy equal treatment under the law. It should go without saying, what the fuck? Any bill that directly includes a non-essential, hostile comment telling the public that confusion can hinder equal treatment under the law begs the question, what the fuck? And if you are a listener who in any way, shape, or form disagrees with that, I equally challenge you, what the fuck? I also added a little note that HB 752, the 2026 bill, which criminalizes trans people's ability to use public restrooms, has already passed in Idaho, and it was set to go in effect in July 1st of 2026, immediately following Pride Month. The news article as written says that that was the case and those who need any help should reach out. Anyone that needs help should still reach out. However, my understanding in recent news is that the courts have actually laid some safeguard here, and this particular law might actually be delayed, which is good. We do not want laws that criminalize restroom use for no good reason. The only basis being deception and lies, that somehow this helps protect people, when really it only helps put people in even worse positions, whether it be somebody invading any particular restroom for any particular reason, simply to be the bathroom police. This only puts people in less position of power for their own safety. But fortunately, there seems to be some court action to halt that. So please look into that when you can. Let's make it clear. My stance is and always will be that denying trans people the right to use a safe, appropriate restroom is and always will be discriminatory, immoral, and prejudiced. It will not stop real abuses in these spaces by the overwhelming majority of offenders who are cisgender. It will harm intersex people and cisgender people who don't look enough or behave enough like what public opinion expects. It will harm trans people in wrong restrooms and cis allies deemed as conspirators to crime for merely attempting to defend their trans peers. There's no good ending for anyone to this delusional obsession with bullying and criminalizing trans people like me. But I digress. On June 11th, a user replied to my comment, quite appropriately saying, quote, "Either you treat people equally or you don't. This law obviously doesn't," end quote. To which I made one single quick reply expressing the same outrage our entire community feels right now. And it was this one comment that set everything else in motion, because the next day on June 12th, I woke up to a site notification that my account was permanently banned, saying, quote, "After reviewing, we found you broke Rule 1 because you promoted identity-based hate or attacks," end quote. Uh-oh, that's not good. So what grave comment did I leave that promoted hate? So I must now paraphrase, as Reddit hid or removed my comment, so I can't directly repeat it verbatim, but it was nearly identical and of the same effect to this. Quote, "Yeah, exactly. At that point, Idaho GOP might as well have just said, quote, 'You subject yourself at your own risk, F-slur,' end quote, and then end quote." Keeping in mind, this is 100% in agreement with the frustrated sentiment of the whole chain, the growing disconnect from Republican lawmakers and reality, and the really gets right to the heart of what conservative extremists are absolutely already thinking. We are merely slurs to them. Why even hide it at that point? It ought to be more exposed. Likewise, my use of a slur here is not only being asterisked out in the article, nor is it being verbally said as F-slur or masked in that manner. But the same safety to censor the slur itself in use was also used at the time of typing, because even in a non-targeted, non-hateful context, I would never type such a word out to just be fully visible in plain text. Despite this, Reddit systems, or they call it automated systems, detected this and proceeded with a permanent ban. And to their defense, I will say that does sound cautiously appropriate, to which I will explore more near the end of this. But instead of holding it for review or offering a more lenient temporary ban, they immediately went to the nuclear option. Permanent ban. Wow. Could I appeal? An appeals process exists, which I immediately followed. You're given a short, near 300-character limit to explain the situation, which essentially is about the same length as like a Blue Sky post, to appeal a whole permanent ban. This includes any lengthy hyperlinks, any quotes referring to site guidelines or terms, or explaining any other context pertinent to the alleged offense. The appeal is reviewed by an actual person to reduce false positives. This seemed like a misunderstanding that would likely be granted appeal by a reviewing human reading full context and even just glancing at my profile, which has almost too many options to clearly see it is by a pro-LGBTQ plus individual. On June 13th, I was told my appeal was denied. No clear explanation was provided for rationale beyond saying, quote, "We gave the following a second look," unquote, and restating the same former false allegation. This is despite a hate policy which clearly says, quote, "Context is critical. When evaluating a report, we assess the activity of a community or an individual user, their pattern of behavior, and the content itself. This allows us to distinguish genuine hateful attacks, bad faith, humor, or coded language from content shared for purposes like social or political commentary, educational uses, or condemnation of hate," unquote. In the appeal denial message, it is also implied that a human being did indeed review the appeal, as in contrast to the original ban notification, this message states the following, quote, "This decision was made without the assistance of automation," unquote. And finally, on June 14th, I received an additional notification that the nonprofit Reddit account for Trans Unity Coalition was also permanently banned for alleged ban evasion. Despite these accounts being held by different legal entities, created using different emails and credentials, and used for different purposes. Plus, this separate account has been denied any ability to feel in a pile whatsoever due to Reddit's claim that this is an alt. At this point in time, imagine me with a skeptical face going, Flag Day, America's favorite unheard holiday. Here's something totally different for you before reviewing the state of everything. Did you know that one of the lesser known holidays of the US, Flag Day, is celebrated every June 14th? It's not very commonly known. I'd argue it's so poorly recognized it may as well be to the level of trivia knowledge. Less so a fact that will get you confused looks for not knowing it, more so something cool to tell that person you're trying to impress at the party, if they're just like super into trivia. But in more recent years, June 14th has become a bit more widely known as the birthday of a certain high-profile individual. Someone so unfathomably self-absorbed that they practically go out of their way to let others know the significance of the day, so unnecessarily expensive and grandiose in how it is done. A person you ought to be highly suspect of. Someone who it's safer to question every little thing that they say. One who must not be named. That's right. Today is my birthday. Happy 33. Believe it or not, Reddit can know this too, because if you offered to provide it at one point or thought it was a requirement to sign up, Reddit Incorporated collects and likely sells this data about you. So whether coincidence or not, the Inc.'s birthday gift to me was a permanent ban of a personal 7.5-year-old account. The permanent ban of an unrelated nonprofit account due to association, and an unspoken chilling effect of any future account needing to be made in hiding, like closeted, perhaps? Possibly on separate IPs, and with no clear direct association whatsoever to my identity or who I am, and with zero ability to actually express who I am because, well, wait, why exactly again? Logic would indicate this is because either 1. No human being was ever involved in the ban and appeals process to review what was stated, though this seems unlikely if the appeal states that automation wasn't used, whatever that means. 2. A human reviewer misinterpreted a reclaimed use of a slur by a member of that same target group as propagating hate without asking, so why was this said? Or even more simply, just following bound protocol to check for surrounding context. Or 3. A human being intentionally chose to single out the account of a queer advocate and the trans nonprofit account shared and used by that same trans individual, providing neither any real opportunity to modify the flagged comment nor the same leniency real cyberbullies receive all the time under the same circumstances. Earlier, I asked if this was deserved. This isn't the same as asking if this is or isn't permitted by site policy, but rather if maybe I dabble too much in fuck around, find out, and that I just kind of maybe deserve it on a technicality. Or I did it to myself, etc. I cannot tell anyone else if they feel this should be deserved. However, I do not believe this was deserved. Nor has anyone who I've talked to so far. The sole instance of using a mass slur to expose what conservative lawmakers already think and feel, even if they are careful-ish to not publicly say it themselves, or sometimes not careful-ish at all, and whether a capital ban is deserved, that becomes matters of public opinion. I am a believer that reclaiming charged words and providing space and context where they are used, not to put people down, but to highlight prejudice and diminish the charge, is key in giving bigots less angles of attack. In this case, verbal attack. We would not have reclaimed the word queer for our community if our elders had not fought so hard to own it, and all the way through the 90s and even still recently. And in a seemingly positive direction, use of certain queer slurs, particularly the F-slur and the T-slur, are seeing increased use by in-community members in non-hateful, sometimes playful even, contexts. Keyword being context, and not just blindly or recklessly. That gives me genuine hope that loaded charge can be diffused slowly over time. Finally, what I can factually say outside of public opinion is that Reddit's justification for the first permaban does not match what its own policy says it is going after, promoting identity-based hate. Where was I promoting hate instead of providing legislative breakdown and relating to the shared exhaustion of an entire 3 million body community in this country alone? Not even including our weary allies and all those caught in the same crossfire. Or perhaps, was I myself targeted by hate by an unseen reviewer? Was it simply AI gone wrong? Not capable of understanding the nuance of context, despite policy assuring these approaches are safe on their platform. Perhaps AI tools can parse context just fine, and it was simply told not to. I may never know. I do know that this isn't the only story of double standards that trans people face. Back when I began investigating mod abuse of trans users in queer spaces, I opened reporting channels for people to come to me or my nonprofit team if they had any similar experiences on the platform. It has been disheartening to see how deep these experiences run across our community. Yet paradoxically inspiring to see people unafraid speak out. And there is never a time too late to share your story if this has ever happened to you. When asking several members of our community for any thoughts prior to releasing the story, the feedback that stuck with me the most was when one person told me this: "We need stories like this out there so that our community knows where we are not safe." This is not a story to solicit a nonprofit. This is not a story to receive praise or pity. This is about asking what our institutions and platforms are doing when trans rights are under attack. No matter if that is legislatively, digitally, or anywhere. Who is helping keep us safe? Who simply is not? And why does it feel like when mainstream platforms say they have our backs, wrongful actions like this take place and suddenly those in control are too spineless to own up to it? I really wouldn't expect them to be so spineless, especially not if they literally keep saying they have our backs. Is this band simply acting out of an abundance of caution? Perhaps I'm being melodramatic. Let's do a rapid fire test. On June 13th, and on the same day the first Permabans appeal was denied, one particular subreddit, r Play Rust, a community for fans of the face punch video game Rust, saw a quote-unquote popular post that still exists today, and even as of recording this, I can confirm it still exists today, of a player using the term gay in a derogatory manner. Specifically, they created the term gators as an amalgam of gay plus raiders, which is one opponent type in the game, complete with rainbow stylization and a large middle finger. This post was likely made as a tongue-in-cheek response to seeing other loud and proud posts made during Pride Month. The same OP then openly declares via the comments they aren't discriminating. They just say, not discriminating while actively discriminating, and completely missing the point that all derogatory references to the gay community are inherently homophobic. Duh? Nowhere in the post have any bigoted or ignorant comments had any consequential action. Rather, the good, more enlightened users, calling out the rampant prejudice, simply have their voices pushed down the algorithm as they accrue mass downvotes. Those unfamiliar with this particular video game and the majority of its players, those familiar with this particular video game and the majority of its players may already know that this really isn't the most inclusive gamer base, nor is its subreddit community. One may be tempted to say, well, what did you expect? But that is irrelevant to the topic of equally upholding site-wide standards. If what we are suggesting is that sometimes communities silently permit even more discrimination while getting away with it, and supposedly safe spaces are under a harsher microscope to potentially err, that would require potentially investigating an even larger problem with the ethical direction of the site as a whole, and targeted subreddit by subreddit discrimination. If the same logic to my initial permaban is to be accounted for here, we should be seeing multiple permabans from this one gaming post alone. The AI police would have a field day with this one. To which, hold up counterpoint time, I don't personally believe that these users, who for the benefit of the doubt I will assume are just immature teenagers of at least platform using age, should necessarily have their entire accounts wiped and site access forever compromised just for the sake of proving a point about how wrong they are. Their post ought to be removed and a teachable moment offered as to why their ignorance is in fact rooted in hate. But the lack of action here at all is clear. The use of the term gay in what is just another variation of lol, that's so gay, is 100% the literal definition of promoting identity-based hate or attacks. Like the thing I was permanently banned for allegedly doing, despite not doing, while multiple other people actively and actually, in fact, are doing this quite visibly with zero consequences. It is beyond disbelief to me that this discriminatory post, at the very least, hasn't even been taken down, nor any mod or admin statement issued, and that cruel divisions like this can take place unchecked during Pride Month at all times. How many times have you ever seen or said yourself, cruelty is the point? Reddit's enshittification. In quick summary, we all have reason to fear it. For any reason whatsoever, platforms such as Reddit have the ability to terminate your profiles without notice. In theory, that kind of quality control is sensible to keep abusive users away from vulnerable groups and reduce cyberbullying. And any social digital interface it is expected to have quick guidelines and enforcement protocol to ensure spaces remain safe. But more and more, platforms like Reddit are leveraging AI tools to automate this review process and reduce costs by replacing paid human reviewers with iterative algorithms. Isn't America supposed to be about creating jobs, not eliminating them? The process of enshittification is not simply that a site or app becomes worse. It's the hyper-capitalistic process of how. For digital media services, it requires a platform to amass a large base of users, prioritizing the user experience to attract new people to recommend the platform organically. During this phase, things might actually feel good because you're supposed to be persuaded this is the one. Once a certain threshold is hit, it leverages this user base to attract new service providers, which inevitably imposes a trade-off between prioritizing interests of the users versus interest of the service providers who bring money with them. And then finally, when a threshold in holding major service contracts is reached, this status is leveraged to new shareholders to get the best bang when selling out, imposing a higher level of trade-off between prioritizing shareholders over both the original user base and now the partnering service providers, compromising both upstream services and downstream user experiences. Profits over people. Reddit finally going public only as recently as Q1 2024 says a lot about what we are soon to see over the next few years in regard to this process on their platform. But regardless of where Reddit Incorporated is currently at on that timeline, this article is primarily about the safety of our community on social media platforms, including not only Reddit, but so many others as well. Social media platforms are not simply just encouraged to make these spaces safe for people. Rather, they have a moral obligation to do so, even if they demonstrate that they lack the moral imperative. What kind of heartless monster would allow their own users to be bullied, knowing there is this obligation to help make vulnerable individuals less scared of the world? But in order to achieve this would require sweeping review across the board, because in discussing the many ways trans people can be subjected to undue abuse, hostility, or prejudice, even on this one platform alone. It isn't just one point of failure. It is many. Or, if Reddit is simply a dark drug, perhaps I'm experiencing the early stages of withdrawal and need to ride it out. And at least this wasn't a piece on Meta, which would be twice as long. TUC updates. So, for fans of our nonprofit and those of you who have seen other social media things before, we provide TUC updates, or updates from Trans Unity Coalition. What has our nonprofit been up to? What are we doing? What are we currently providing? Where are we? There are so many updates all the time, and the current ones that I can think of. Tuesday, June 30th, Washington, D.C. We will be holding congressional lobbying education training, where we will be at our Capitol in these meetings with all these wonderful people, and we will be talking to our audience about how do you communicate and engage with these people, specifically on the subject of trans rights in America. This will be, I believe, the third time we've done such a thing at DC, and it's going to be super fun. Anyone that wants to participate, I know what you're thinking. I can't go to DC. I live in, well, not DC. Here's the thing. You don't have to live in DC. You don't have to be anywhere nearby. What we are doing this Pride Month of this year, we are accepting 3-minute voice recordings from all of our community members everywhere. And we are going to directly bring these voices, these digital voices of those who could not make it because they have a job, they have school, or maybe they don't have any of these, and that might be why they can't make it. We're bringing the voices directly to our elected officials in a way that I believe we will be able to leverage, utilize, and show that, yes, these people are real in your district too. How about you fucking take these issues seriously now? Thank you so much. And if you want to be part of the fun, well, reach out to our nonprofit. If you want to actually be there too, hey, the more the merrier. Just reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking. What else do we have going on? Ooh, well, a few weeks ago, we actually kicked off a Python educational trainer. This is something in our Discord space. We've been holding it every Sunday. I do believe that this upcoming Sunday we'll have to have it a few hours earlier, so anyone who's part of this course and listening, well, you've heard it here first. But we're going to be starting it a few hours earlier because of some time conflicts on that day, unfortunately, and thank you for understanding. I believe we are currently looking at, where are we looking at, all of you? Somebody will mention it. We're looking at, I believe, lists, tuples, and how to use all the wonderful functions that can concatenate lists, watch them grow, and connecting that to some other fundamental things that we learned in the past few weeks. And we have a lot of wonderful projects that I'm currently overseeing here. I'm really excited to see what happens to the chess engine in Python and some other things that other students are currently working on at the moment. And I believe for the last update, in addition to DC, in addition to the Python course, those of you who might not have heard yet, we have launched a mutual aid center, and we call it Kaylee's Mutual Aid Center. And this is one of our free resources where, again, you don't have to be anywhere near any of our operating teams or any of the states that we are currently in. This is something that is provided for all trans Americans across this country. And anyone that wants to make use of these services, just check out our website and see what we have. We currently still have a few hundred items on our mutual aid, and that is a number that keeps cycling and changing a little bit, but people are making requests of these things, and it is exciting to see that these wonderful free gifted items from members of the community and our allies are going to homes and places who need it. So if anyone needs that free swag, that free stuff, check out KMAC, which in a way you're actually inside of the heart of KMAC right now, because fun little fact about this particular closet and why I chose it as a little recording space is because this is actually, in a way, my warehousing unit right now for a number of things. This gets used for nonprofit space, for things that go in and out. This gets used for even just my own stuff, but when you have space, you gotta make use of it. And those are your TUC dates for the week of June 14th, 2026. Cool. So it looks like we're about to wrap this up with the end of our episode, and I wanted to talk about, as the last featured segment, something that I thought was a really cool topic of philosophy and how that in many ways kind of comes together with gender and identity and like who a person really is. And this is something that it's just really good, like, food for thought. I always believe that trying to get the critical thinking parts of the brain is important, not just for holistic fulfillment, but because it keeps your brain going, and your brain is an organ, right? We don't necessarily think of it like an organ, but the human brain, squishy little 7-pound mush, delicate mush, is very much an organ in the human body, and you have to respect it. You have to keep it healthy. You have to keep it active. It's something that, without that, that doesn't sound good, right? How does not that sound good? But so I love when there's opportunity to really get people thinking about something, like get them thinking in a way that's like, why is that? Or, that's a different perspective. I took something that I felt was a nice little area of need, right? Because I hear very commonly people use the term need. Like, this is a need. I need that. There's something that, like, I want. And if I want that, what do I need for it? But then it really emphasizes that the need to fill that checklist for a want feels like a need when maybe it might not be a need, like a true need. Especially if the goal is really only something that's more like, I want that, right? I want that new car, therefore I need money. Well, we probably do need money or the currency or tools of trade for things that money affords, like bills. But if you want the car, therefore you need money, does that mean that you want the money? Do you need the car? Why do you need the money, but you only want the car? Did you need the car? Maybe you didn't. But it's how our brains get stuck into this trap of like, oh, there's something I'm working for. And because that's a goal of mine, maybe I've already invested so much into it, all these things to get that are now needs. And if they're viewed as needs, that means you're going to prioritize them in a way where maybe there are other things to prioritize too, like your own mental health, maybe your own joy, maybe family members or friends. And it's really a good question of what is truly a need? And that's going to be very subjective, right? I can't tell somebody what they need or want. Like, that's not my place. But it is a good way of challenging internally for oneself, hey, wait, are these really things that I need, and are these things that I want? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a thought structure for getting the base essentials that a person does actually need for survival. And then once those essentials are obtained, once they're met, once those are fulfilled, then other things become needs that are now available because they were less in priority, but because you had the basics, you're now free to explore, like, well, what else do I need and want? And there is a pyramid structure for how this is actually done. And in such a structure, what we see is at the very bottom, physiological needs. These are going to be like the ultimate, you gotta have this, right? You can't enjoy life if you're cold and hungry on the street, naked, with like no resources. So at the very least, you need to have some of these very basic essentials met, right? And that's why down here we have the physiological comforts: food, water, warmth, and rest. So these are things that you do actually require if you're going to be able to achieve these other things. And from there, you have safety needs, just above that. Above safety needs, you have belongingness and love needs, more emotional and interpersonal. Above that, you have esteem needs. Esteem, that is more how you hold yourself in regard, like your own view of you. Now that you already have the survival parts done, well, what is this person? What is your internal ego saying? This person is going to crave connection, or I want my name out there, or I want to be known as the person who knows how to fix bad plumbing. Like where does that person's internal sense of that identity say that is going to be my next need after I have these other basic needs met? And then even above self-esteem and esteem needs, self-actualization. And this is a really important one because I feel that it bridges this. I feel that it bridges who we are as, biological breathing organisms to the inner spirit of who and what one is. And this is something that I say both as an atheist, but as somebody who is deeply spiritual, that self-actualization is a key reward to reflection and moments of peace and exploring what you find to be your slice of happiness in whatever this existence is. For whatever reason, we're all here, and to whatever means that we are all stuck on this little tiny bluish rock, right? How do we find comfort in this grand existentiality of ours? Well, sometimes it feels like we can find that. And that's something that all people ought to have. But it would make sense that if that's something that feels like a personal good, there would be others out there who want to deprive people of that. Whether just pure discrimination, pure prejudice, pure superiority complex, whatever the reason, if somebody can say that they found peace, if somebody can say that I'm really comfortable with my life, there's a lot in my life that makes me happy, I'm happy to have it, and my life really isn't that bad. That's such a great thing to have. People out there envy that, especially when they can't have the same thing. And to put others down just kind of seems like that's where just having like a bully mentality comes from. And it's very sad. And that's why I feel like bridging things together can help really spread empathy, because that's what is needed in some places. Now, for this hierarchy of needs, I wanted to talk about it because of how it intersects with gender, right? Which is really fascinating and cool, because here we have a few things. Like at the very bottom, physiological needs, safety needs, those are going to be like, of course. Of course you have to have those. If you're constantly in fight or flight mode because you need food, you're starving, you are hungry, these are so basic for mental health and even just personal medical health that, of course, these are going to come first. And if you really think way back in evolutionary history, in our hunter-gatherer society that we used to have, it was really a matter of life or death. Are we going to feed our people? Are we going to find, hunt, and consume that which keeps us going so that we can keep going and so that the next generation can also have a chance too? And, these are basics that just pretty much everyone needs. That's never changed. And once you have these basic elements to give you moments of peace, a place that you can take a breather, places where it's like, well, what else is missing, right? Because then now that's where you start to feel lonely. Now you want connection. Now you crave not just feeling like perhaps maybe as a form of protection that maybe you're not alone, which means if there are any predators and anything or anyone out to get you, you're not alone in that. There's a safety from that. Or probably more positively, where maybe you like connection, maybe you want friends, maybe you want people who you can go to the movies with, or you can, read a book and talk about what the book was and how you enjoyed it, or maybe just, somebody that you have that connection with. Connection comes in many, many forms. Those forms are all important. It's important to have that interpersonal fulfillment because, it doesn't feel good to feel alone. It feels like you're just taking on the whole world and it makes you really doubt a lot of things about yourself. Being able to find connection, of course that's going to be somewhere on here because it is an important need. And right here, it does make sense that if you're actively under attack, that, well, putting in time and energy to find friends and maybe the more social and interpersonal, even intimate connections can kind of come later, because if you're constantly in fight or flight, if your adrenaline is constantly going, it's going to compromise your ability to be like, this is me, I'm cool, yeah, let's go be friends, right? It would be like, wow, why are you stuck in a panic mode? That is, wow, right? So, I mean, and yeah, you want to be able to enjoy these moments too. That's why these connections should be in peace. They should be equally pleasant for everyone. And then above that, esteem. Like, where is your place in all this? Like, where is your place in all this in terms of actually saying, like, yeah, my life's going pretty good, or my life is comfortable, or, just like the things that I'm doing feel like they create a more complete me. And then that factors into how you view yourself. Like, if everything's going wrong in life, you're probably not going to hold yourself in high esteem. At the very least, you'd be telling yourself in your mind, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? Like what should I be doing instead to remedy these problems? And I'm going to come back to that because sometimes it isn't that person who's actually at fault, but rather that's meant to make people feel that way. And that's no bueno. Self-actualization, which here it says achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. And I feel that self-actualization can have so many definitions. And I think that might even be the beauty of it, to be honest. It isn't meant to be like one, what does self-actualization mean to me? Therefore, it must feel the same way for you. It's the keyword self, you listening to me. You're not me, I'm not you. The things that give you pleasure in life, the things that give you fulfillment, joy, happiness, and a sense that you're doing life right, those are going to be so beautifully unique to you, just as my versions of that are so beautifully unique to me. So if I were to ever talk about self-actualization from like a grander cosmological and existential lens, it doesn't necessarily have to be that like, that bougie for everyone else. It could be simpler. It could be, beautiful in a way that is for that person. So I will never try to invalidate experiences, but this is my interpretation, and really the bigger purpose just being like, well, how do people even achieve these basic needs within the trans community? Those within the trans community can probably readily know that while the trans community isn't some like hive mind, it's not like one of us, one of us. Although we like to joke about that. It's just a lot of people who just share a particular quality. They happen to not be cisgender. They happen to be some other thing that is unique to them. Perfectly valid, and something that other people are still trying to learn, and other people, other people, kind of a bit more antagonistic as to everyone else's ability to learn that correctly. I digress. But when you hit that point where you're like, oh, hey, I feel like a man. I feel like a woman. I feel like, well, not really either of those two, but some elements of that. Or even just, I feel like me, who I am, what I am. I know that for myself. Don't need to explain it. Don't need to give a label. I know who I am inside. Perfectly valid. In fact, important, because I believe not enough people ever even get that opportunity to question it. To even ask, like, hey, wait, what if, right? Everyone's stuck in like go mode, and that's how our society kind of wants us to be. We don't really challenge things. So we know that means systematically we don't challenge bigger picture questions. It means we're just kind of stuck infighting with each other. But even internally, like even, ignore all that. Ignore other people. Ignore the person down the street that you don't like. Ignore the person up the hill that doesn't like you. Just think about you alone. Enter your own mind and really focus on insert your name here. Or insert you here if maybe you don't have a current name. Maybe you're trying to decide. Lots of people are in that position too. It's perfectly valid. It is totally okay to say, yesterday this was my name, but today it is different. That's fine. That's what I want to be called. Respect being demonstrated is that people say, okay, that's fine. Just let me know what I should call you. That's basic respect and courtesy. That's a social good. When people are at that point, that junction of, oh wait, hey, transgender? I'm transgender. And whatever that means for that person is going to be a totally different subject. But once you're at that stage, then the challenges of facing discrimination, facing an at-large society that's just really awkward about the type of people we are as a subject because they've seen too many movies, TV shows, comedy, presentations that put our community down as if we're something to be mocked, as if there's any logical sense to making fun of a different set of people, like in any context, but for some reason that type of people is us. And then getting to that point and having people going like, okay, I know enough about these trans people because too many assumptions. When really there's a lot of misinformation and people really should be asking more questions directly to trans people about, okay, enlighten me, educate me. I know nothing and I need to know, right? And we don't see enough of that. We don't see enough people reaching out to ask, like, is it all a sexual thing? No, of course not. Is it all a perverted thing? No. How could one even, suggest that? It's offensive. Once you realize that people are discriminating communities and that now that puts the trans community at an elevated status of kind of gets the worst of all of it in all regards, then this hierarchy of needs here doesn't really change the hierarchy, but we do see things that really challenge a person's ability to, what do Idaho Republicans say again? Enjoy equal treatment under the law. So, physiological needs. I've spoken to way too many people who, due to discrimination, had a job, got fired, couldn't get rehired on the streets. On the streets, in a car, not good. And what does that mean? Well, it means now people are back down here. Where are they going to get food? Where are they going to get water, warmth, rest? These are things that do not come easy when you have to find a place to hide just to get a few hours of sleep because you are exhausted. You have not had a bed in weeks, and you just need to like find a bench or someplace with shade where it won't be uncomfortable. Someone won't walk on you or spit on you. And that's just fight or flight mode. And then you're juggling that with like, okay, well, I only have like $4. What am I going to eat for the next month? Where am I going to get water? If hopefully I have access to that, but if it's like the winter, maybe pipes are frozen, and it's like if you live somewhere where those aren't just accessible amenities from the public, well, where are you going to go for these things? Very sad. But if you were trying to figure out a career, if you were trying to figure out, like, who am I as a person? I have all these relationships with people, family members, friends, peers, colleagues, but I can't advance those relationships. I can't help resolve any issues in any of them. I can't focus on those because I'm starving on the street with nowhere to sleep, right? It shoots you back down in this hierarchy. Some people are fortunate where, they're still able to get these basic needs. For myself, I'm privileged. I have an apartment. I have a wonderful household where I have a very positive, healthy, and long-term relationship. I have a place I can sleep. I have food. I have, the ability to budget for what I'm going to need to eat and my other basic needs, bills, etc. I am so blessed in that manner that life is going okay for me. But that isn't true for everyone. And even if it is true for me too, like wherever I am on this current hierarchy, if one thing just went wrong and suddenly it was like, well, back down here, how am I going to progress with those important, very required, like bigger picture questions that I was trying to untruth for myself to unpack? Like, well, me and my age, what do I want to do for the next 10 years? What is that person? Who do I want to become? And, well, if I'm just trying to survive, I don't really have much time to sit down and be mindful of that. I'm just stuck thinking, how am I going to not feel pain in my stomach or like cold, freezing, shivering cold, or blistering heat, etc. This hierarchy of needs is something that I feel is both alluded to in a survival manner, and just to highlight that there are a lot of vulnerable people suffering right now for no fair reason but discrimination, and that is the public pressure keeping people suffering. Without that, if people weren't attacking others, being hostile, imagine a world where people were just like, yeah, sure, you're fine. Think about how much more inclusive and peaceful that would be. People would be able to have better access to things. They wouldn't even feel fear about reaching out of concern that, like, am I even safe to do that? It's such a, like, backwards environment where I can't believe that's even the America that we're in, right? It's depressingly sad. But I still have a lot of hope because I see so many people fighting to resolve and rectify that. And it is amazing to see that. Even in 2026, baffling it's needed to still see hard-working people, advocates and supporters fighting for that cause day in and day out. Very blessed. Now for gender, though, I want to look at going up this hierarchy. At some point, if we can get over that hump of survival and assume, okay, so we have a person, a human being, who as an individual is their own vessel of consciousness, right? And they are now starting to ask these questions about belongingness and love and esteem and self-actualization. Once you're at that point that, well, I'm still a person, I know that, I might go by a different name. My gender now is not the same that I might have described it many years ago, but I'm still the same person. So what does that same person really want? And then now you're getting back into questions about really regular things, right? Like, well, what do I want my career to look like? What do I want to be doing and learning and saying that I accomplished that? I was that person. where that's building for the rest of your lifetime. What kind of values do you have as a human being? Like, what do you believe are your causes? Not all trans people are trans advocates, right? Most trans people are living their lives and trying to, just like anyone else. We're not all out there shouting in the streets, fighting for rights, because, like, you know, life doesn't always afford that one. It's not really for everyone, too. And if you really think about it, nobody should be obligated to have to do that just to be heard or given equal treatment. So, in an ideal version where things continue to progress positively and go right, we don't really want to have people wasting their precious time of life fighting for causes. It should be the causes, you know, fix, they get better. That's the goal. But in having moments where one is able to, you know, just ask themselves really important questions about bigger picture things. Am I happy? Is there anything in life that's making me sad? Did I lose people and I can't talk to them anymore? But if I could, what would I want to say? What were all these questions that were left unanswered because anything, really? Do I feel guilt? Was there something that I could have done and didn't? Is that going to haunt me? Do I let that haunt me? Can I turn that into something more positive? What about all, like, deeply seated memories? So far away that it's like, if you really give yourself time to think, you can remember, you can evoke things that happened when you were younger. Smaller. Long time ago, yet really not a long time ago, if you think about it. To think back and go, well, knowing what I know about myself now, what did that 4-year-old memory of myself mean then? And what is the series of events that led me to here? Do I even want to know those answers? Are those questions important to me? There's a lot of what I would call, I guess, mindfulness opportunity, where I feel being able to have ample time where you're not wasting it, you're not really doing much, you're just kind of thinking to yourself and really asking yourself in self-critical and really challenging manners, like, what do things mean to me and who am I? In the kind of way that you don't really have to put that into language or words. You just need to feel it and know it deep inside for yourself. That can offer clarity, or that can, you know, let the bottle pop a little bit and just vent a little bit to yourself. And that's something I feel absolutely comes higher on this hierarchy, because, I mean, you know, you have to have a safe space to be in that mode. You have to be able to have these base needs net first, so that you can give yourself that kind of time. And I feel that everyone should have the ability to, you know, find a really nice tree with clouds in the background, sit down and just stare, just look at the sky, and not have to worry about, did I do that thing? Not have to worry about what's going to go wrong now, but to really just sit and let your thoughts breathe out of your brain, and then just let new, entirely original thoughts come, and let questions come from that. Really ask yourself, what don't I get to ask myself enough? I feel that's important for enlightenment, and I don't use the term enlightenment like I even have any sense of what that means. It's just like, I feel there has to be an abstract concept of some enlightenment, that the more you can really just philosophize and really get more into that broader abstract, that it can be very empowering. And, or at least that's an opinion that I personally feel I heavily agree with, one that I feel like I see demonstrated in just my own acts of mindfulness and trying to appreciate as much as I can, really, from all of this. And, but in kind of you know, the cruelty is the point. That's an important thing one could have, but people out there who don't want that for people they don't like or disagree with, etc., you know, they do everything they can to make that known. They do everything possible to troll, to rob you your chance of your humanity. And very frustrating. Very much a lot of dark energy of emotion that I would say stems from recognizing that as fact. But even at the same time, you cannot let that energy consume you, or else they also win. If they turn you into what they are trying to portray you as, then they kind of won. And I would say that there must be reliance on defiance. We must show people that, no, I know I'm better than that, and I'm not stooping down to that level. And that's important, but it also requires a lot of patience, and I've definitely seen a lot of people who are just immediately like, nope. And I feel that that's perfectly valid too. Everyone has their own reasons for feeling as they do, but there has to be moments of peace, is my point, for people to be able to have this up here opportunity to just, for themselves, free of the noise, free of oppressors, and free of outside influence trying to just introduce mental chaos in your life. To do that requires being able to have moments of reflection, safe space, your own little bubble of this is me zone. And I think that those who can find that are going to be those who, when you talk to them, you listen to them, you ask them questions, and you can tell they've had a incredible amount of opportunity to really ask themselves those questions first, because the answers they give you have already been internally informed by their own brains and their own minds and their own experiences. And that reflection is important. And so, to you, the person listening, try it. If you really haven't had the opportunity recently, just step outside, go for a calm walk, or if maybe that's not something that you have the opportunity to do for any reason, finding your own space anywhere. Could be in your room, could be in the basement, could be in a digital environment. Maybe you're a video gamer. Heck, it could literally even just be sitting on the floor in the closet, just looking at everything, where things are placed, and just going, okay, well, all right. But allow that near nothingness be your safe space, and turn that into your own little fortress of solitude where you can just really talk to yourself and really have a this back and forth conversation with the person you are inside, so that that inside voice can come out. And that is what I feel in many ways ties directly into gender. When you come out, when you tell the world this is who I am, it's because at some point you had at least that one question of mindfulness of, who am I? What is my gender? And then for me, when I had those long conversations of just thought and really asking myself those questions, it was, yeah, you're kind of girly. You're kind of that person. And from there, just so many wonderful things in my life. And I feel that that's just what people should have. It doesn't have to be that they, come out as transgender like I did, but at least being able to talk to yourself and asking your own questions of, like, who am I? Like, what is my identity? It doesn't have to be necessarily with respect to gender. It can. It could be with respect to anything else. It could be sexuality. It could be just, like profession. It could be skill set, your passions. It could be really anything. And that's the kind of mental sandbox that allows for somebody just to like play with who they are and to just be like, yeah, no, I've never tried cooking, but I'm going to go make a pizza right now because why not? I have the means to go to the store and I am kind of hungry and I've just always wanted to, since I was really young, know how to make a pizza and I've never given myself that opportunity. Why not right now? That's the question that I will leave for you. Maybe not a pizza, but what is your pizza? What is that kind of thing that you've always wanted to do that you just recognize? That was, I was younger and thought this would be cool. You can do it now, but you never have. What is that thing? I'm sure everyone has at least one thing. And I know that I'm sure I have plenty of those things. So maybe by next time I'll come back with something that shows I put my money where my mouth is. What do I want to do? And I will just know mentally that that means something that maybe when I was younger, more of a youngin' wanted to do, and then just hadn't from then until now. But I do have the means to now, because that is still me, right? What do I want to do? I might be, I don't know, like 20, 25, whatever years older now, but that's still me, right? And that's still you. So just food for thought. And thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening to everything here. And if you found this entertaining, if you even just think, that's hilarious, look at that one go, hey, I'm all for it. So tune in next week where, well, I guess next week will be a secret topic, but there shall be a couple topics. And hopefully we get the opportunity to talk about maybe some of the cool stuff that our nonprofit is doing. And I would be really excited to explore kind of like just broadly what the nonprofit ecosystem, the advocacy ecosystem is kind of looking like, at least from my perspective, in my role as executive director of Trans Unity Coalition, and even just in my personal role of somebody who just kind of travels around and gets involved where I can and sees so many different communities responding to attacks and crises in so many different ways. And I feel that pulling together that well of knowledge will be key for building community. And again, it's been a true honor. So I am really excited to potentially be able to talk about that in either next or another episode, but shall see all of you in a week. I like ending things in a positive note. In many different environments, in some video games, in some events as I show up, I am known to try to give affirmations, at least a unique affirmation each time. And my affirmations are kind of whack because I'm somewhat dorky. So I'm a person who feels that if I just give somebody blind praise or just say everything will be better, then there's always kind of that risk of like, that might not be the best sentiment for everybody. And so what I try to do is paint things a little bit more pragmatically. And so we'll give this a try because like I can probably demonstrate it by giving an example of what I mean. So my very pale and weak affirmations might be something kind of like this. I don't really know you. I don't know your place in life. I would love the opportunity to, if you ever wanted to share your story, if you ever wanted to reach out to say who you are, please do. I feel an incredible amount of value and fulfillment hearing other people reach out because, one, it means they trusted me with saying hello, and two, it means that that person still feels like they realize their story is worth being heard, because it always is. And this is my affirmation for right now. Your story is not just currently important it will always be important. All of our stories are equally and always important because in this plane of existence that we are all on crossroads with, and how that means that my day to day, your day to day, people that just eventually cross paths and now they have a shared goal, or for some reason in life they've found each other's presence. The stories of those people and the collective sea of identity and livelihood and experience on this planet is what makes life beautiful and important. And I believe it might have been the great Carl Sagan who said something to the effect of, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." And those words always ring true. So always remember that your story is absolutely invaluable, and I would love to hear it. So that will close out our first week of Tuck in the Closet. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.